Hello everyone, welcome to Marlin Chess Kids. Today I will show you the game played by Goran M and Dusan. And this beautiful game complete in just 20 moves. And let's see how the game play. The game starts with the pawn to e4, c5, knight to c3, g6, d4, c takes the d4, and now the queen takes d4, and the queen is attacking direct to the rook. After this, knight just go to f6 to block the attack, and can come the bishop and attack the queen. Then bishop to g5 was played, and now knight to c6. And this is the first 5 move, and you can see that the white is slightly better in this position. And the game continue with the queen to d2, then bishop to g7, preparing to go for a short castling and get the king away from the center of the board. And here the white just goes to bishop h6, trying to attack the bishop. And with this, the black just go for a short castling, and now the white know that the black has castling kingside and start to plan for a queen side castling and preparing to attack with the king side, such as h4, h5, and capture the pawn, and capture the pawn, and check the king. So after this move, on the 8th move, the white plan to attack on the king side. We first get away the king from the center and goes to the queen side castling. So after this, the black continue to play queen to h6 and trying to attack the pawn, and also with the bishop attack the knight, and you have a simple queen checkmate the king from the black. So after this 8th move, the position now is equal, and after this, the white just continue to play, such as play f3. Back to this position castling, the white back to this position, the white also can have the idea of capture the bishop, and after king capture, then you can play h4, then continue to move the pawn forwards and attack the pawn and attack the pawn. So after this move, f3 was played, then the black played a d6 pawn, and now the white play h4, trying to storm with the king side. Another suggestion here you can play is you use the bishop to capture after king capture, then you can just develop the bishop to c4, and this bishop will protect the pawn at a2. So in the actual game, after d6, the white just storm with the h4 pawn. After this, the black play bishop to e6 with the idea to attack the pawn at a2, and if the knight capture, the queen will capture it back. Then the next move will be queen to a1, and will be a very simple checkmate. So after this move, the white just move h5, and if the black can just capture the pawn in this position, and this will be a strongly threatening. And if you knight capture, then the queen will capture, and the next move will be goes to queen a1, and it will be a checkmate. So for example, if you make any move such as develop the knight, then you will be a queen to a1, and it will be a checkmate. And back to this position, after this move, you can just move queen to e3. Then here the bishop can just capture the bishop at h6, and if the queen just capture, then now you can just continue to play rook a to c8, and you have the idea of goes the knight to b4, and the rook will be able to capture the pawn and check. Then after check, you can queen just continue to capture the pawn and check. So you have a very strong attack from the black with the bishop capture the pawn at a2. And back to this position, if you capture with the pawn like f takes g6, then the pawn will just capture, and after this bishop capture, then your king will capture. Then here, if your queen come to h6 and check, then the king will just move back to h8, and here the queen cannot do anything to capture. You cannot capture the pawn or capture the rook because it's fully protected. And now at this position, the black is winning by a pawn, and this will be slightly better a bit for the black. So bishop takes the pawn will be a good idea in this move. And in the actual game, the black play knight take the pawn, and after take the pawn, the white use the bishop to capture. And in this move, if you capture with the knight, such as knight takes the bishop, then the queen will come to h6 and preparing to capture the pawn and checkmate. And if you move the knight to h5 to block it, then g5 pawn will continue to attack the knight. And now the knight, if you move back to f6, and now you just bring the knight continue, such as knight g to e2, and you can also come to f4 and continue the attack. So bishop takes, the bishop will be a strong move, and after this the king just capture it. Now the white continue to attack with the pawn to g4 and attack the knight, and here you have the queen to h6 and check the king. So g4 was played trying to attack the knight, and now knight f6 is a very strong move because it's able to protect the pawn from being captured. So the queen just goes to h6 and check, and now the king just moved to g8, and even though the white can't checkmate, the white is better in this position. After this, now the white just trying to move the knight continue, such as knight g to e2, then you have the idea to move to f5 and continue to capture the pawn and keep on the attack. So after this, knight g to e2, and this you have the idea of playing a material pieces to move the pieces up. And now the knight also can go to g3, and it will be winning as well. You also can come the knight to f5, and here the queen, you can come here, you have the checkmate and protected by the knight. So after this move, knight e5 was played, and here this tactical blunder for the black, because the white can just push the pawn g5 and attack the knight. So the best move at this position could be playing a bishop takes the pawn. Then if the knight goes to g3, then the bishop can goes to bishop b3, and this allow the queen to attack and have the check. And if you capture with the pawn, then the queen will be able to go to a1 and check the king. And if your king move up, then the knight will just continue to check. And now if you move the king goes to d2, then the queen will just capture the pawn and check the king. And now again we have to choose within these two places. If you move up again to e3, then the queen will just capture the knight and check and win back the bishop. And again, this is a move that the black can move. And if you move the king goes to f4, then the black will be winning by playing a knight to f to d5, and this check is a winning move, because after rook capture, then the queen can goes to e1 and check the king. And now there's nothing the king can block, and only you can block with the rook, and here you have the queen capture and it will be a checkmate. Another suggestion is if you capture with the knight, then you can use the king to move up to g5, and after this you have a queen to f6, and this will be a checkmate. And if you use the pawn to capture, then you have a queen to e5, and this also will be a checkmate. You have a diagonal checkmate, and this is also called a dovetail checkmate. So back to this position. So this bishop attack is a brilliant sacrifice, and here the white cannot capture. And if the white continue to attack such as g5 to attack the knight, then the queen will just g5. Then if your queen just capture, and after that queen capture, and this the white will be clearly winning the game. So back at this position, knight e5 was played. After this, the white continued to attack with the g5 pawn, trying to attack the knight. And now the knight moved to h5, and here the white is threatened to win with a rook to capture the knight. Rook takes this knight will be a very strong attack for the white. And in the actual game, after this move, the knight to f4 continue to attack the knight, and this is a brilliant sacrifice because this knight cannot be captured. And if you capture the knight, then you have a queen takes h7, and it will be a checkmate. So after this move, if you move knight capture the pawn at f3, then you have a rook sacrifice. And if you capture with the pawn, and now the knight c to d8, and this knight will capture the pawn, and it will be a winning move. Because if you move any move such as a pawn move, then the knight will capture the pawn and check the king. And if the king moves to h8, then you have a queen to f6, and this will be a very beautiful checkmate, and nothing can block the checkmate. So back to this position, if you use the knight to capture, then it will be a completely winning for the white, because after pawn capture, then bishop to g4 to protect the pawn and the knight. And here you can see the white is clearly winning after capture the queen. So knight f3 it could not be played, and the best move would be just play a bishop to g4. So after this move, the white can just capture with the pawn. If you capture with the pawn, then the knight will just capture back, and now the queen at h6 will be trapped. And if you capture the knight, then the pawn will capture it back. So this, the black will be clearly winning with the knight trap the queen. And back to this position, this bishop is one of the good moves where the pawn cannot capture the bishop. So after this move, knight c to d5, the white keep on moving the pawn, and now you have the idea to capture the rook, the knight and sacrifice, and the knight will be able to capture the pawn and trap the king and threaten to mate with the rook. After this move, the knight capture the f3 pawn, and this is one of the tactical blunder which allowed the white to play for a rook sacrifice, and this capture will be a winning. So after this move, the white can win the game with just sacrifice the rook, but in the actual game, the white just used the knight to capture the h5 pawn. After capture the pawn, then you have a bishop capture, and now the rook will just capture it back, and it will win the game. And back to this position at the move 20, the black resign the game. And if you want to continue the game, if you capture the rook, for example, the pawn takes the rook at h5, then the knight will just capture and check the king, and the king has nothing to block the check except to move the king to h8, and after this move, then the queen to f6, and it will be a checkmate. And back to this position, if you use the rook to capture the knight first, and the white also will be winning and mate in 12th move. After this move, if you use the knight to capture the pawn and protect this h7 pawn, then the knight can just capture the e7 pawn and continue to check the king. And after this move, the king only have one place to move, which is the kings to h8. Then at this moment, white can just play knight f and capture the pawn and check the king, and this is one of a very powerful capture and check, and this is one of the good sacrifice. With this, if you use the pawn to capture the knight, then the knight will just capture back and continue to check the king, and now the king only can move to g8. After this, now you can just continue to bring the bishop into the action and continue to check the king, and if you block with the pawn, then now you can just use the rook to capture. You can just use the rook to capture the knight, and this will allow the open check from the white. Then anything move from the black, such as a queen to d8, then you can just now move rook d takes the pawn, and here another open attack with the bishop. After this, any move from the black, such as rook check, then you can have a rook to d1 open check and able to attack the rook. After this, if you use the bishop to block, then the bishop will continue to attack and check the king, and this is typically like the modern mate. So with this, the only way to prevent is to use the rook to f7 and block the bishop check. And now you can just use the rook to capture the queen and continue to check. And after this, the rook capture, then now you have another open check with the knight. You can just move knight to e5, and you have the open check from the white, and now the bishop able to capture the rook. So if your king move to h8, then you can just have a very nice ending with the knight capture the rook at f7, and it's a very beautiful checkmate control by the white knight. So with this, thank you.